Hello
Good
and
morning.
welcome to Zagreb in Croatia and our second ProFilm Days conference.
Nice to be here. Thank you. As weird as it is.
It is. Thank you for your time, and I'm not going to wait a minute longer because I'm very happy to welcome you here, and I hope there's going to be a lot of questions. So let's start the conversation with a question. Where are you shooting now? I know you're in production, and how is it more complicated in this year than any of the years before? What are your challenges?
Well, I mean, it's a very bizarre time. I'm shooting a film in Prague and outside of Prague. And due to the COVID restrictions, it's been, a serious pain in the ass, and it's also quite expensive. And we're in the Czech Republic. We have very strict procedures that we have to follow. What's happening that you can kind of see throughout Europe is we're spending, it's an 11-week shoot. We're probably spending about $650,000 for the COVID part of the film. That includes all the testing, which has to be done with a crew 2 to 3 times a week, the cast 2 to 3 times a week, the medical personnel that we have to have, the additional catering. It's complicated. I mean, we're getting the work done. There's not an extensive amount of overtime, but obviously it does take time. The temperatures have to be read by everybody each day. Crews have to be split up. It's a real pain for makeup and hair because they have to basically be in total gear outfits with masks and face shields. They can't go on the set. They can only deal with, the stars of the film. Then the extra makeup, hair and makeup also proves to be very difficult. So it's a challenging, but the film business is like that. Everybody kind of mucks in and you get it done. It's difficult on the emotional and psychological end because you can't really, hug your crew at the end of the night.
Enjoy the shot.
Yeah, you can't really take them out for a drink. You can't really show them dailies. It's different. It's not as much fun, but you get the work done and you get everybody at least is continuing to work, which is the biggest challenge also for most of our crew.
You mentioned that there is not a lot of overtime, but do you calculate in the beginning immediately that it's not going to be a 12-day shoot, it's going to be a 12-week shoot, or it's going to be a 13-week shoot?
We did at the beginning because before we started, it was our first time doing a COVID film or a COVID series, and we were going to estimate they were going to take about another week. I'd say that on average, we're probably doing 3 hours more of overtime that we would normally do per week. So yeah, it does have its thing. And of course, that's a cost issue as well, which is not included in that $650,000 I told you.
Yeah. It doesn't sound that bad, but at the end, it adds up.
Yeah, I mean, the bad part is when if you prepared the film before COVID and you finally get greenlit, and then all your financial partners are on board, and then they expect you to take that $650,000 from the budget.
Yeah,
So
of course.
That's a problem that a lot of us are all facing.
Yeah, especially with big movies like yours.
Yeah.
Is it, in your experience now, I mean, you've been all over the world, is it easier to produce in Europe? You at some point decided to create your base in Prague.
Well, it's interesting to say that. I mean, I did the very first film I did was a film called Pennies from Heaven, and it was such a disaster that I had no other choice but to move to England. And where failure is a way of life, or at least at that period during the 80s, it was kind of, as long as you did a good film, it didn't matter whether it was going to make money or not. So I didn't really have a choice. I knew that when I came back after the opening of the film and my parking spot had been painted out, that it was time to move on.
Oh, and the parking spot, yeah, that's the hardest
thing. And also a few of your phones are missing. They do it overnight. It's incredible. But I love working in England. I spent 20 years there, traveling all around Europe. And it just is a different experience. We don't have the unions, we don't have the fringes, we don't have the Teamsters, we don't have all the things that are seem to be fighting against making a good film, and the restrictions that are also involved in the United States. So really, I haven't made anything in the States in 35 years, except for a couple of weeks of pickup shooting and things like that. I've been blessed and lucky that I've been able to shoot in over 60 countries. So I love the travel. I love shooting on location. It's just, it's a different experience. Plus, in America, you have the right to tell your crew exactly what it is you want them to do. If you want them to work 16, 17 hours a day, they have to do it. The penalty is that you get paid for it, and you get paid for it big time. In Europe, we have a different relationship, especially in the Czech Republic. We don't have this hierarchical situation of a producer and a director. Everybody is part of a team. And I have to ask everybody on the crew each day if we're going to go over, if we need to go over. I need their permission to do that. And that just subtly changes the dynamic of the relationship between, the crew, the director. The director is an asshole, and, he's not going to get very far. Whereas if he, sucks it up and is a decent person, and also if everybody knows that he's prepared and he's doing his work, and that we have provided all the facilities and resources that the crew needs, they do it. So it's just a different.
It's much more, I would say, human conditions to work, humane, because it's a team effort. It's not the two top people telling everybody what to do. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
When you mentioned 60 countries, and you love to travel, and do you go on location scouts? Do you
always,
like to do that part? And how do you think you're going to do it now? If you have any other projects that are set for next year with COVID and with actually, restrictions on traveling, and have you started doing that online as well? There's been a lot of remote location scouting recently.
Yes, I mean, look, it's always difficult, and especially now because in the Czech Republic we're just about ready to lock our borders from anybody leaving or coming back. So that becomes a challenge, trying to sneak across the border at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been caught in situations where at the very last moment, money has been pulled out of a project. I did a film with Nick Rowe called Castaway, and the studio took like $3 million away from us. So we had like $2 million to make the film. So we had to go to a famous travel agency called Thomas Cook. And we had to location scout based on booked holidays. And we finally found an island in the Seychelles, but we were never able to go there. We had to, we just didn't have the money to do the recce that we wanted to do. So we just hoped and prayed that the island was good, and it did turn out to be good. But these are the challenges that all of us are facing now. Everybody who's making a film, it's just really difficult. I mean, what I normally would do, I have, if I was doing a film in Italy, for example, or Croatia, I would have the local location manager go out and scout locations as best as he could as well. But knocking on somebody's door and saying, "Can I come in your house when you've got kids and everybody's there miserable inside," is pretty tough as well. So it's just a challenge that I think we're all going to have to face, and I think we're going to have to face it for a long time. It doesn't really look like there's going to be a vaccine until mid next year, and then being able to distribute that vaccine is going to be we could be looking at all of 2021.
Yep. Yes, everybody's saying that we shouldn't really plan on going back to normal if that ever happens, at least until the end of 21.
And it is changing the dynamic of how we shoot films. I mean, I have a project next year that starts shooting in March, hopefully. And, it does take place all over the thing, but we're using the Epic Games Unreal Engine. So we're creating more of a virtual studio, but we still have to shoot the plates. But a lot of it takes place in the future. It's a concept design. So, those are some of the challenges that even Croatia has to face. What kind of studio are they going to build? What kind of infrastructure? there's pros and cons on every level. Like, where do you even begin? Where would the studio be? Would it be in Dubrovnik? Would it be in Split? Would it be in Istria? Because getting between each one isn't the easiest thing to do. It's not like you can be shooting in Pula and then say you want to be in Dubrovnik the next day, and be able to start shooting at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's just going to be difficult. So those are some of the issues. And what kind of studio do you actually, I mean, I totally believe in, Croatia building a studio. I've had extraordinary times shooting in Croatia. I spent a month doing Borgia and Dubrovnik on Red Tails, which George Lucas and I did. We shot, in Istria, Split, on a series called Crossing Lines. We shot all around in Istria as well, and Opatia. It's a fantastic country. And that's one of the issues you've got. Okay, where do we build a studio? What kind of studio is it? Is it going to be the old-fashioned studio? Because we're entering a new digital world where, there will be virtual studios that demand an enormous amount of power, different heights, different spaces. But there's an incredible report that I think one of your, you have one of the members who wrote this report, a guy named Jonathan Olsberg.
Yep.
He did a report with PACT, which is the English part of the industry, and the Swedish Film Institute. And that kind of is a really good report that everybody should actually try and download and read, because it really does talk about the sustainability of what we as filmmakers have to go through as profits are being cut, as intellectual rights are being taken away from us. And also it really refers as well to what it's like to build a studio. Because I've been in a lot of countries where studios have, when we moved from England to Australia and to do Star Wars, the studio had just opened. Fox had just built the studio. It was an old market square. They did build quite a few new stages, but those stages were outrageously expensive. Film, is emerging. It's been always a working class medium. So if you're a producer or a filmmaker, you don't give a shit how beautiful the studio is or how great the makeup rooms are. You need to have the makeup rooms. You need to have the construction area that can work to allow you to build the set, especially if you have a plot-based film. But these are some of the questions. What kind of public support can you get? What kind of private sector support can you get? What will the government do? And again, the big question is, where are you going to put it in Croatia? That represents the best of, and where the most local talent is as well. But the great thing about is if you do have a studio, it can bring, lighting, camera, grip, accountants, catering, everything to one place. The film community has a place that they can go to. If you live in Dubrovnik and it's in Split, okay, you drive, you'll have to stay with a friend or get a cheaper apartment, but at least it's in your country. And the great thing about a studio is it does, for example, I'll give you an example just to digress for a second. If there had been a studio in 2009 when we shot Red Tails, we would have shot the whole film in Croatia, but we couldn't even find the warehouses. And if we did find a great warehouse, of course, they were being used. So I had to do all of the location shooting of what was supposed to be Italy in Croatia. It worked out beautifully. I've had basically the same local crew on every film I've done in Croatia. I've lived there. I had a house there since 2001 on the island of. So, I'm not someone you have to convince. I just want to do anything I can to help support everybody because, the crew is expensive, but that's another issue. You have another dichotomy going on. You have, a beautiful studio being built in Serbia. The wages are much, much less, so if you start to get the work, there has valuation of what crews are going to expect, because you then compete on a full European level. And right now, it's not like 5 years ago. Now you have a movie magic budget or a spreadsheet, whatever you use. You go to a country, you get the rebate. You know what the rebate's going to be. You know what the penalties, the audit fees, everything else is. And if you can save $500,000, $1 million, that's an extra, couple of weeks shooting. Then you're going to go to Serbia. So it will force the crew to reevaluate what they make in terms of, because they charge in euros mostly. And, it's not that the fees are excessive. It just means that you're going to be very competitive, because that's how it works. If I were doing a film and the budget was really tough, I'd fly into Serbia, I'd fly into Croatia, I'd fly to Prague, to Budapest. And at the end of the day, I don't have much choice. If I can offer my director another week's worth of shooting, and I could, and obviously at the locations there. I mean, the most important is the talent in the end of the day, because what I don't want to have to do is bring 50, 60 people, which is what you have to kind of look at when you're dealing with like Romania 10 years ago, but now they've got a flourishing film industry. They have government mandates that force the broadcasters to actually use, if not the studio's Croatian talent. There have to be, things like that. I mean, what we're trying to do, what we hate in the Czech Republic, especially if we end up being a service company, is having an American film come over and bring, 25 people who are completely useless, haven't been to Europe, not useless in terms of their job, but they make 3-4 times the amount of money. They don't know the language, they don't understand the process, and they don't even culturally understand the different way in which you work. So that's the next big stage, that the Croatia has to go through, is building enough of an infrastructure in terms of gear, which I do think you have, in terms of talent. I mean, the construction people we had in Dubrovnik, first class, absolutely brilliant. The location department, everybody in the accounts department and production department were they're not only wonderful, but seriously dedicated, great filmmakers. That was an easy answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
You took 3 other questions out of me, but that's okay. That's perfect. Mentioning all these locations in Croatia, what was, let's say, the hardest to shoot and then the easiest to shoot? Because based on that, my second question would be, where all the talks are that we would actually build a studio closer to Zagreb because of the airport, because of the infrastructure to get anywhere within 2.5 to 3 hours, except Dubrovnik. But then Dubrovnik, you have a plane, so you're there in 45 minutes. It doesn't take 7 hours anymore to get there with trucks. So it's kind of Zagreb or around Zagreb. Would you agree with that decision, or you think Croatia is more island and coast country to shoot, because that's what Zagreb Film Office is trying to change a bit, and welcome more people to Zagreb and surrounding area, and even Slavonia, which has perfectly flat fields where you can shoot anything from Western movies to whatever. It's completely different than the coast. We need to start introducing more other parts of the country.
No, I think, obviously Zagreb is where most of the talent actually lives. You are right. You can get to, I mean, again, if I were shooting Croatia, for Italy, or I'm shooting Croatia for Croatia. Thank you. I would use every single part of the coast and every island I could. And obviously, if I have an enormous amount of interiors, then I would shoot those in Zagreb, in a studio that needs to be fulfilled, modernized, and getting ready for this new, virtual digital situation that we're probably all going to be in.
One of the things that we are actually trying to do, and hopefully it happens after all this craziness is over, is to start pushing Zagreb and Croatia as Zagreb and Croatia. The first film that actually did that was Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, where Zagreb is actually playing Zagreb. We need to try and find a way how to, let's say, convince the producers to actually put Zagreb in the story as Zagreb. We were thinking about talking to the mayor to actually give another percentage, like an extra 5% incentive. But do you have any other experiences where you were in a situation like that, and what changed your mind to actually put that country or that city in the film as they are instead of faking somebody else?
Well, that again is one of the great challenges. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. I have always I loved a film that Gordon Willis and Woody Allen shot called Manhattan. And it represented this love story, not only that was completely wacky about two couples, but most importantly, it was about the city itself. And I have tried desperately to develop a story about Prague, because unfortunately, everything that I do is either science fiction, historical. The series we just finished takes place in Berlin, but we shot it all in Prague. But so what we kind of did about 3 years ago, the Prague Film Fund was set up, and I was on the board for about 3 years. And basically what its position was the city of Prague would give up to like $100,000 to filmmakers for them to write segments of their script that, instead of, exterior Eiffel Tower or exterior Big Ben, it would be, the Old Town Square in Prague. That's one way of doing it. You have to, it's a difficult thing to set up, but if anybody needs any help, let me know. But you have very strict, the film has to have a distributor before you even get, allowed to put the script in. It has to at least have 10 minutes of Prague, or let's say Zagreb or Croatia in it. The scene has to make sense. It isn't something that people can go in for $100,000 and suddenly cut out of into the film, because you don't get the money unless it's in the film. But yes, there are ways, and every little incentive helps. I mean, it's extraordinary that, and at least you have this, whereas we don't have it in the Czech Republic. We don't have a government that supports the film industry at all. They will go to the ballet, the opera. They have no understanding of the cultural impact of film and what it means to tourism, what it means to infrastructure, what it means to, bringing, a 10 or 20 or 30 or $100 million series into a town for 20, 30 weeks, and how it affects people's lives and the businesses that it supports. They just don't get it. If you were building a beer factory, you'd have no problem. They build the roads for you, they build the thing. But all of those things have to be, considered. And anything that you can do to help, somebody come, because as I said, you're just sitting in that computer in front of Movie Magic and you're looking, where can I make this thing the cheapest? How can I give the director all the resources? And how can I make sure that what was in the writer's mind, I can help deliver to him and the director? And often that has to do with money. So, you just have to, it changes the competitive nature of how you set up a film.
True. The main point that you said is the fact that Croatia made huge steps forward in that aspect of understanding film as a business. For many, many years before, it was considered a cultural expense. And that changed everything in our government's minds. And we do have a government, a Ministry of Culture, that really supports film. The 25% incentive is something that was created years ago and now raised. It was 20, now 25. So if we eventually, when the times are better, because Zagreb recently had a big earthquake as well, so everything got now pushed at least 5 years backwards. But eventually, if we get the city to give another 5%, for it to be mentioned, then we're up to 30, and I believe it should make a difference.
Absolutely, it's huge. We can't get the government to go beyond 20 in the Czech Republic, and we tried for the last 5 years. We watched our industry literally die in front of our eyes for 5 years, when Budapest started a rebate, and our government refused to do anything. Business was completely wiped out. In fact, when I shot Red Tails 2009, I was the only film that shot the whole year.
Wow.
And that's just it's just tragic.
It's
Slowly they're getting up, but do you
it's
mind?
strange because you have a feeling that there's so many films shot in Prague that it's always doing something. And even us talking to the film commission there, it seems like they're doing so much. And so it's surprising to actually hear that there's not that big of a support.
No, I mean, there is definitely support in the Minister of Culture and the Department of Financial Affairs. They have, they have supported it, supported the rebate. But,
Yeah.
for a period of last year, our rebate was kind of stopped for about 6 months while we waited what was going to happen in the government, who was going to become the prime minister, who was going to support it. So, those kind of irregularities, those kind of stoppages really affect people, because it takes about a month for the whole industry to find out about, oh God, the Czech Republic has stopped rebates. And then suddenly nobody's calling you. But it is true, we have a very healthy industry. And that's partly because we have an infrastructure of crew that is, most people can come here with maybe just their primary heads of departments, maybe production designer, costume designer, and a cameraman, and that's it. You don't have to bring anybody else. Our construction facilities are fantastic, as is in Croatia, at least the crew that we had. So each film that comes in helps support and develop and bring new people into the business. And it just takes, now if you can suddenly get, as we probably have 20, 25 films a year coming in. Well, more television series, because film is almost an obsolete thing for this next year or two. But that's how you started. Yeah, that's how you start a small cottage industry, because that's all we'll ever be. Now, would you mind terribly if I just put my finger over this camera so I can have a quick hit of my cigarette?
Oh, of course. Go
Thank
ahead.
you so much. This is the longest I've ever gone without it. I'll be 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
Much better.
Don't worry, you can have a break anytime. One question that comes to I'm sorry. One question that comes to mind because of all the things that happen in the United States when it comes to actually bringing extra funds into films. How was your experience in Europe with product placement and actually putting more money into the budget through those means?
Well, for me personally, it's always been a pain in the ass because, you ask for cars and they don't arrive, maybe they arrive the night before you start shooting, and you got to test them, you got to take them out. I've only done one big one on Star Wars, and it was with Pepsi. But we just wanted water in Tunisia, in the desert in Tunisia. We never got it. It's just stuff. It's very hard to depend on. So I kind of stay away from it. And if you're doing big period films or science fiction or in the future, it's really tough to do product placement, but anything that, if it's contemporary and anything that can help, a producer, shave the edge, I would recommend it, as long as it's a legitimate company that can deliver.
We have a couple of questions, so we have 10 more minutes and they're starting to come in. So I'm going to quickly switch to that. The first one is, how did the overall situation affect scenarios and setup before filming something with COVID?
I don't let anything change the script. I mean, you really, in the end of the day, that is the Bible. And as long as the director is bought into the script, and if you're hiring a director and he is, obviously they have great suggestions and different things, but as long as everybody's in sync, we know what kind of movie we're going to make. And, we would never try and things. Now, obviously there's limitations. If you're having a scene, in the Coliseum or thing, and you need 50,000 extras, that you have to figure out a different way to do. And that has to be usually digital. But we do have a problem in terms of extras. They can't be that close together. So we have to cheat the camera. We have to add extras in between their distancing. It's all of those things that make it more difficult, but you find the solution. That's the great thing about filmmaking is we finally have the tools to be able to do anything that's inside a writer's head.
Yep, true. The second question from Jeff Blue. Now that you have wrapped your latest production, what's next?
I'm looking at...
Or can you say?
I have a very small fishing boat on the island of Borgia, and I hope to be there for most of the year. I'll tell you, that's my dream. No, I've got a couple of projects and I can't really discuss them, but a couple of exciting things coming up next year, and then I think it's time for me to let go and be. No. I have a wonderful company here that's run with two other people, and they're really special. And it's now the baton has to be passed on to them. And
well, then maybe we'll see you on Prague, because
absolutely.
I go there every single summer. That's my island. So
what, Prague?
Prague, yeah.
Oh, fantastic! We're just outside of Milna.
In the little town of Postira.
Well, absolutely. I go to the fish market there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. We have a second question from Jeff Blue. What are your thoughts on the government-backed COVID insurance programs, such as the ones in UK now?
I totally support it, because one of the other big issues that we're having is film is not the greatest company or the greatest kind of network for an insurance company to insure. It's just too high risk now. And what's happening is, of course, you can get an insurance policy, but it's not for the cast. So the burden that goes on the financial entities that have entered into, financing the picture, whether they're broadcasters or private funds or public money, means that they have to take on that burden. If an actor were to fall sick and be out for a month or 2 months, obviously you could close down, but that has its inherent cost as well. But you also have the problem is that other actors, maybe stars, whatever, have other projects to go to. Yeah. So that can cost a serious amount of money, and that's a serious risk that the people that we all have to deal with in Europe just do not want to take. So it makes much more difficult. It makes it much more difficult. But yes, I do support it completely.
Next question from Mate. Have you introduced any new filmmaking methods because of COVID? For example, remote filming of certain scenes or anything like that?
I haven't done remote filming because it's just so antithetical to anything I believe in. I want to be there. I want the director to be there. For commercials, it's fine. And a lot of commercial work is being done online. But for me, not yet. If it gets really worse and there's no other choice, and, you've got a situation where but that's one of the reasons why, we are creating these virtual studios so that, we do have the possibility to shoot on location, virtually inside a stage.
Perfect. Well, one of the things that I wanted to keep for the end is, please come up with a script that can be shot in Zagreb, and we'll make sure that you get everything that you want.
Thank you very much. I love Zagreb. It's a great city. It really is. I have a lot of friends who live there, and I love going there because usually I drive from Prague, so we'll stop in Zagreb for 2 or 3 days and then down to the coast.
Well, next time you're here, we definitely need to have a glass of wine or something if you have time.
Love that. Is there anything else?
There's I don't see any other questions coming in. I don't know if one question that I do have is from all the locations that you shot in Croatia, what was your favorite?
God, Dubrovnik was such a special, because we went there in January, believe it or not.
Oh. So it was all yours, empty city.
It was just ours. It was just a fantastic experience. We were there for a month. We got to meet everybody, that, all the store owners, everybody kind of, it was very, weird at first, the first couple of days because nobody's sure. But, obviously we had a Croatian crew and a Czech crew, and Czechs have always loved going to Croatia. And it's just, everybody became friends. It was really quite interesting, and we tried to separate our businesses so everybody got business. The restaurants got business, as many restaurants as we could, but it was a special time. But then again, I have a very, very soft spot for Istria. Not just the food, the wine and everything else, but all the small towns like Motival and everything. It just in Ravine, it's just very, So and Split, I've only shot about 4 or 5 days in Split, in the old town, which I love too. But no, I love, I want to do an island movie though.
Oh, good.
I want to do a movie about Brač and Korčula.
Exactly.
I want to shoot Korčula for Brač, so people are totally screwed up. It's just come to Brač.
And when you think about world locations, where was it the easiest for you to shoot? Where did you have the least problems?
For location work, I would say overall city, Prague, and locations. God, everything was, I know this sounds very Pollyannish, but we really did, especially with Young Indiana Jones. It was a special period. It was like what you were talking about earlier when, the world in Europe was cultural. The financing was cultural. If your film didn't make a lot of money, but the critics loved it and the audiences loved it, even though it wasn't a huge hit and didn't return an investment, you could keep on working.
Yep.
As long as the work was good. And, that's why I love being in England, where failure is a way of life. And that made it perfect place to be able to make a film. But then by 1990, the world changed.
Yep.
And it became a financial one, and people needed a return of their investment. Plus it also became much more expensive. And, but we hit it at the perfect time. We started in 1990 and we shot for 4 years, and we shot 35 countries. And
that's amazing.
It was just pure bliss. It was, we got to travel the world, all as a group too. We, after the first, second episode, the crew locked in, and, we spent 4.5 years together. Shooting.
That's big family at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had 16 divorces and about 13 babies born. And countless affairs, and it was just it was insane. But everybody had a really, really great time, and we stuck it out together. And then we took that whole crew to make Star Wars for 10 years.
That's great. That's
really so it was great.
Fun. Going back to these funny stories, we actually have the last question. If you can remember from the top of your head, what is your favorite story from all the years making movies? There must be hundreds of stories that happened on the set, off the set. What comes to mind first?
Just the total debauchery that happened off the set. I think those are my favorite moments of just, again, especially, if I'll just take India as an example. It was 6 days a week. The first year we shot for 52 weeks nonstop.
Oh my God.
And we did 17 countries the first year. So you can imagine how complicated and just intense the relationships were. But everybody knew they had to get along. But I'll particularly remember one time we were shooting in the Masai Mara in Kenya, and we had tents. We had tents and a wonderful part of the tribe. It was, had hot water boiling for us for showers and the thing. But it was a very intense kind of crew in terms of the relationship between men and women, because it just got very very wacky. We had this terrible rainstorm. And because if you were having an affair, then nobody wanted anybody to know it, because they didn't want, the girls to have to suffer from it, and they didn't the boys getting thing. But we had this huge rainstorm. And the next morning, you could see where the tunnels had been built from one tent to another had collapsed because when the construction crew had come in 8 weeks before we were shooting, each person, head of department, would come and say, listen, I love Mary Jane. Is there any way that you could just build a little ton of more? So that was hysterical. That was great. But it's always different.
That's fun. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure. And we hope to see you in Croatia soon. Good luck on finishing the project, and get some rest afterwards.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm just waiting for the election to come in.
Yeah, I know. We're all following on the side.
so close. All right. Take care. All the best, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, and read the Jonathan Olsberg report.
Oh, we will. We will.
Yeah. Everybody who's watching is definitely worth reading it, because it's very illuminating.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.